The classroom smelled like fresh paper and pencil shavings, the kind of scent that belonged to early mornings and new beginnings. Sunlight poured through tall windows, casting golden squares across tiny desks arranged in neat rows. The bulletin board displayed bright letters that read, "Welcome to third grade," and a colorful stack of storybooks sat waiting on a low shelf. Mr. Jordan Ellis stood at the front of the room, straightening a stack of reading folders. He was tall, calm in the way rivers are calm, steady even when moving. His suit was simple, not expensive, but pressed and clean. His hands moved carefully, like someone who believed in treating the small things with respect. This was his first year teaching at Brookview Elementary, a suburban school where most students came from families who had lived in the community for generations. Jordan was new, not only to the building, but to the neighborhood itself. And he was the only black teacher in the entire school. He'd noticed it, of course. He always noticed. But he walked into the job with purpose. He didn't come to fit in. He came to teach. The door opened and students began to trickle in, small faces, backpacks too big for their shoulders, nervous and excited all at once. "Good morning," Jordan said warmly, smiling as he greeted each child by name from his roster. "I'm Mr. Ellis. I'm happy you're here." Some smiled back. Some whispered to each other. Some simply stared, trying to understand who he was. Kids notice everything. But it wasn't the children who drew the first lines. It was the adults. A woman in a crisp beige blazer and pearl earrings stood in the hallway, watching through the classroom window with her arms crossed tightly over her chest. Mrs. Whitmore, mother of Olivia Whitmore, a bright, anxious girl, now sitting quietly in the second row. Mrs. Whitmore leaned toward another parent and whispered, too close, too loud to pretend it was accidental. "I just find it strange that the school assigned him to a class like this. There are standards here. We expect qualified educators." The emphasis was sharp. The second parent shifted uncomfortably. "Well, I'm sure he's certified," Mrs. Whitmore scoffed softly. "We'll see." She didn't step inside. She didn't speak to Jordan directly. She simply left her judgment at the doorway, like a stain on the welcome mat. Jordan continued greeting students, unaware of the conversation just outside, but aware of its impact before it even took form. He had lived enough life to recognize the kind of silence that comes after being seen, categorized, dismissed. Olivia raised her hand once class began. Her voice was small. "Mr. Ellis, I don't really like reading. I'm not good at it." Jordan smiled gently. "That's okay," he said. "We're going to get good at it together, step by step. You don't need to be perfect to start. You just need to start." Olivia blinked. No one had ever said it like that before. In the hallway, Mrs. Whitmore hesitated before leaving, glancing one last time at the classroom door, her expression tight as if bracing for disappointment. She didn't realize yet. The person she doubted most was about to change her child's life, not by proving anything to her, but by teaching Olivia how to believe in herself. 2 weeks passed. The classroom settled into its rhythm, the soft murmur of partner reading, pencils tapping against notebooks, the occasional burst of laughter when someone used a funny voice during story time. Mr. Ellis had a way of making the room feel safe, not quiet, not strict, safe. He didn't raise his voice. He didn't threaten. He didn't demand attention. He earned it. But Mrs. Whitmore didn't see any of that. She only saw what she chose to see. And what she chose to see was difference. One afternoon, she arrived early for pickup, arms full of grocery bags and irritation. She watched through the classroom window as Olivia stood beside Mr. Ellis, reading from a book with more confidence than she'd ever shown before. Her voice was clear, steady, proud. Mrs. Whitmore's mouth tightened anyway. The moment Olivia finished, Mr. Ellis smiled. "That was excellent. Tomorrow we'll try a longer passage." Olivia beamed, but when she turned and saw her mother, the smile faltered, like someone blowing out a candle. On the walk to the car, Mrs. Whitmore's voice was clipped. "Why were you reading with him alone? Doesn't your teacher have other students to attend to?" Olivia blinked. "He was helping me, I see." "And that's all he's doing? Helping?" Olivia nodded slowly. She didn't understand the question. There wasn't anything else to understand. But her mother did. She understood the version of the world she carried in her head. That evening, Mrs. Whitmore typed an email. Sharp, perfect grammar, Blade disguised as professionalism. To the principal. I am concerned about classroom assignment. I am not convinced that Mr. Ellis has the appropriate qualifications to instruct students at Brookview. My daughter requires a higher standard of academic guidance. She didn't mention race. People like her rarely do. They let the phrasing do the work. The next morning, Principal Daniels called Mr. Ellis into her office. She was polite, genuine even. She respected him, but she also had to address parent concerns. She slid the printed email across the desk. Jordan read it silently. No sigh, no anger, no surprise. Just recognition. How would you like to respond? The principal asked carefully. Jordan folded the paper once, neatly, and set it aside. With results, he said. No bitterness. Just clarity. He didn't plan to argue. He didn't plan to defend himself to someone who had already made up her mind. He planned to teach, not to prove anything, but because that was the work. The next weeks weren't dramatic. They were steady. Daily reading practice, encouragement, patience, confidence, built in subtle layers. And Olivia began to change. Her shoulders didn't curl inward when she opened a book. Her fingers didn't tremble when she turned the page. She didn't avoid eye contact when answering a question. She even raised her hand first sometimes. Her voice, once a whisper, now carried. One afternoon during independent reading time, Olivia tugged lightly at Mr. Ellis's sleeve. Do you think I could write my own story? Mr. Ellis smiled gently. You already have one. We just have to put it on paper. That was the day Olivia believed she could. And that belief was something her mother had never been able to give her. Because belief requires vision. And Mr. Ellis had always seen Olivia clearly, even before anyone else did. By mid-October, the change in Olivia wasn't small anymore. It was visible. She sat taller at her desk. She volunteered to read aloud. She started finishing assignments early, not out of pressure, but out of interest. Reading was no longer something to fear. It had become something she owned. Other students began to notice too. Olivia, can I work with you? Olivia, help me pick a book. She was no longer the quiet girl in the second row. She was becoming someone who believed she belonged. But the person who noticed the change last, ironically, was her mother. One afternoon, when Mrs. Whitmore picked her up, Olivia didn't walk out silently like she always had. She rushed toward the car, holding papers to her chest like treasures. Mom, look, I wrote my own story. She passed the pages forward, her smile wide and hopeful. Mrs. Whitmore skimmed, expecting simple sentences at best. But the story had structure, emotion, pacing, a beginning, middle, and end. It was good, better than good. It was her. Mrs. Whitmore blinked. Honey, you wrote all this? Olivia nodded quickly. Mr. Ellis helped me learn how to plan the story first. He showed me how to hear the rhythm of words, like music. And he said stories are just thoughts we choose to share. Mrs. Whitmore froze at that line. Stories are just thoughts we choose to share. Something in her cracked, just a hairline fracture. She didn't praise Olivia, not yet. Not because she didn't want to, but because she didn't know how to express something she didn't understand. Instead, she asked, Did he write any of it for you? Olivia shook her head without hesitation. No. He said I needed to hear my own voice. That night at dinner, Mrs. Whitmore watched her daughter differently, quietly, curiously. She saw something she hadn't bothered to see before. Her child was growing, and that growth had not come from tutors, or textbooks, or pressure, or pedigree. It came from someone she had dismissed before speaking a single word to him. The next day, Mrs. Whitmore arrived early again, this time not to evaluate, but to watch. She stood at the classroom window, not judging, just witnessing. Mr. Ellis knelt beside a student struggling with a paragraph. His tone was soft, patient. He didn't correct the mistake immediately. He asked questions. He helped the student find the solution themselves. He wasn't performing. He was teaching. He didn't demand respect. He created space, where respect grew. Mrs. Whitmore pressed her hand lightly against the window frame, steadying herself against something she didn't want to admit yet. She had been wrong. Not about academics, not about teaching styles, not about curriculum, about who she believed was allowed to shape her child's future. The bell rang. Students packed backpacks. Voices rose in cheerful chaos. Mr. Ellis walked Olivia to the door and said, with the same quiet warmth he always carried, "I'm proud of your work today, not because it was perfect, because you stayed with it. That's what matters." Olivia grinned and ran into her mother's arms. Mrs. Whitmore looked at Mr. Ellis. Really looked. No guard, no mask. Just human recognition. "Thank you," she said. Her voice was small, because humility always is at first. Mr. Ellis nodded. Not triumphant, not smug. Just kind. "You're welcome." The conversation was only 2 words long, but something significant shifted. She finally saw the teacher her daughter had seen all along. The next morning, the school hallways were full of backpack zippers, locker doors, and early chatter. Sunlight spilled across the linoleum, catching dust motes that floated like slow sparks. Everything looked the same, but something important had shifted. Mrs. Whitmore walked her daughter to class. No rushing, no folded arms, no quick glances of silent judgment. A quiet honesty followed her instead. When they reached the classroom door, Olivia ran ahead like she always did, but she stopped at the threshold and turned back, waiting for her mother. She sensed something different, even if she couldn't name it. Mr. Ellis stood at his desk, preparing the day's reading centers, brightly colored cards arranged like stepping stones leading deeper into understanding. He looked up when they entered, calm as always. Mrs. Whitmore stepped forward. Not stiff, not guarded, just present. "Mr. Ellis," she said. Her voice carried no pretense. "May I say something? In front of Olivia?" He nodded. "Of course." Olivia looked between them, her small hands clutching her backpack straps. Mrs. Whitmore knelt beside her daughter so their faces were level. "I need to tell you something, sweetheart." Her voice trembled, but only because truth was finally being spoken. "I judged your teacher before I knew him. I was wrong to do that. I was wrong to doubt him. I'm sorry." Olivia blinked, slow, thoughtful, then glanced up at Mr. Ellis. "He believed I could do it," she said softly. Mrs. Whitmore nodded. "I see that now, and I'm grateful for him. Truly." She stood, and for the first time she looked at Mr. Ellis without looking through him. "You didn't just teach my daughter to read," she said. "You taught her to trust herself." There were no dramatic tears, no applause, no music rising in the background. Just real words finally given room to settle. Mr. Ellis replied the only way he knew how. Steady, warm, grounded. "Your daughter did the work. I just showed her where the doors were." Olivia smiled at that, because she knew it was true. Mrs. Whitmore let out a quiet breath, one she had been holding for weeks, maybe longer. Then, she extended her hand again. This time, it wasn't the handshake of apology. It was the handshake of partnership. And Mr. Ellis shook it. The bell rang. Students flooded in. Chairs scraped. Laughter bubbled. A new day began. But in one small corner of the classroom, something important had changed. A child's confidence had been protected. A teacher's dignity had been acknowledged. A parent had grown. No speeches were made. No announcements needed. The real victory was already happening. Every time Olivia opened a book without fear.